Hello, welcome to Sibyl's Lab. My name is Amelia, and I'm a theater maker, educator, and general agent of chaos. And I love all things divination.
I am Danielle. I'm a literature and film professor, a woo-woo Catholic, a reader of trashy romance novels, and I too love all things divination.
And this is Sibyl's Lab, which Sibyl's Lab is a learning collective started by Danielle and myself that brings irreverence, inventiveness, and inviting energy to divination, reading, mentoring, and teaching.
We are today going to introduce ourselves using 5 tarot decks each. These are not necessarily our favorite decks, but these are decks that we think cumulatively do a good job of telling you a little bit about who we are, or at least enough about who we are. And a warning, and another thing that we want to mention. So the first warning is that all of our decks, or many of our decks, are going to include some kind of nudity in case that's an issue for someone. There's nothing too explicit, but we know that some people may not feel comfortable with that. And also, these are not necessarily suggestions for decks that you must or should buy, but they are decks that work for us, telling you about who we are. So please keep that in mind.
All right. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
All right, I'll go first. And these are in no particular order. I'm just kind of grabbing at random. So the first deck I'm going to introduce is an out-of-print deck. It's called the Sorcery Underground Tarot. And it is a kind of mishmash of playing cards and like pip reading, as well as Lenormand. I guess you could say TDM is thrown in there a little bit. But it's my favorite deck. It is made by, what's his name? Brian David McDonald is the creator's name. He, unfortunately, like I said, this is out of print. But this is just like my general deck. If I want to do a reading and I don't know what deck to turn to, this is going to be the deck. I got this deck in 2022. Is that when you sent this to me? This was actually a gift from Danielle. And she knew me very well and knows my reluctance to buy decks generally. So she knew I needed this and she sent it to me as a Christmas gift that year. And it has just become, it's the deck that never gets put away. It's always out. It's either thrown into a bag that I'm taking out with me, or it's on my desk where I'm working, or just nearby at hand. It's the go-to. Why do I think this introduces me well? I mean, it's like everything. I love cartomancy. I love reading playing cards. I love reading Lenormand and pips. It's like everything that I love to read, and it combined into one package. And it's playful. It's easy to shuffle. Like, that's a huge part of interacting with decks, is like, do I like the way it feels in my hands? And it's just, I don't know. I can do any type of reading with it, and it just does it all. Yeah. I love
it. Anyone who's bought a deck for someone else, if they like that deck or love that deck, you feel like you've achieved something magical.
I know, right?
I feel like I've really done something meaningful every time you talk about how much you love that deck. So I will introduce my first deck. It is probably my favorite deck in the whole wide world. This is Tabula Mundi. There are 3 sizes of this deck, so this is the mid-size. It was published by Mel Moline, self-published in 2016. Although I purchased it in summer of 2019 and fell in love with it almost right away. As it happens, this card, the Moon card, is an image that you got a larger size of and framed as a gift for me for Christmas that same year. And I have that up in my house. It's actually next to my TV, so I see it every time.
That's perfect.
I love this deck. So here is how I think that this deck says something about me. It is in the Thoth tradition. It's the very first deck that I got and used that was in that tradition. I had some issues with the Thoth deck itself. I didn't really like the art. I was a little resistant to some of the drama around that deck, at least originally. So this was a deck that felt more accessible to me. It is extremely analytical. I would say that this is an air deck. Melmeline uses 3 cards for each of the minors, or 2 cards, and combines them. So combines the major card associated with each of the glyphs, both the planet and the sign, and styles the cards in that way. So it is a great deck for learning. I love to learn. My nerdy professor energy comes out, and I love me some esoteric study.
I feel like that deck speaks to the like academic in you. Like that's your.
It really does. Although I have to say, you know, when I first started working with this deck, I didn't know anything about the sort of rich theory behind it, or like the academic stuff. I just knew that the images felt really bold and confronting. And a lot of the decks that I had worked with up until that point felt a little too gentle. I needed something kind of ruthless and assisting with self-reflection in a way that felt validating, because, you know, I often do not feel like sunshine and rainbows, or I'm often not in a headspace, right? So we have this card, failure. Like, a lot of people are uncomfortable or confronted by that card. It is not a pretty card. Failure is not a pretty word. But sometimes I feel like a failure. And I really appreciate that it's a deck that positions and foregrounds some less comfortable feeling. I am in that space sometimes, and I feel seen. Uncomfortably seen, but seen. And okay, so availability for this deck, it is still available, still in print, and you can find it at Emelia's site, either Tabula Mundi, I think, .com, or tarotcard.com, which is where she sells her decks. So find it there.
All right. My next deck is going to be the Playful Heart Tarot by Zara. I think her like illustration name is Kitten Chops, I think is what she uses. So we're taking a hard left turn from Tabula Mundi here. I got this deck. Hold on, I have like my cards separated here. I got this deck in 2023 after I got back from Newts, where I met Zara. Really loved what at the time, she was still working on her Pipsqueak Tarot, but we really connected and bonded over our love for TDM. And I got home and wanted to support her work, so I just immediately bought her deck. And I actually really like this deck. It is what I go to when I am feeling kind of like crushed by daily routine. And I don't, so I'm a person of many hobbies, and one of my many hobbies is I have a creative art practice, and I don't always have time for that. It is a thing that requires a lot of time, and I'm a busy person. I have a family and a job and life, as most people do, and I don't always have time to engage in that creative practice. And this is kind of where I go when I need that kind of like juice for my brain. Like, I don't find it super like saccharine sweet. Even though it is, it's cutesy. There are bunnies, there are, people in like weird cat costumes. There's a lot of bright colors. It's still, I also genuinely believe that the deck itself is only part of the reading. Like, the rest of it is what the reader does with those cards that they see. And so I don't find that I stay in this like kind of rainbow world when I read this. It still hits home. It's still relevant when I read for like, I'm having a issue at work with one of my coworkers. What can I find that it can still be relevant for those types of readings. It invites my brain to play when I don't have an outlet for play at any other like point in my day. So yeah, that is the Playful Heart Tarot. You can find this still on her website, which is, I think, let me look at the box, kittenchops.com or something like that. You can just Google it. It's out there. Zara's pretty prolific in the community, and she's wonderful to talk to. And yeah, I just really like her work. Yeah.
Excellent. I should say too, watching you work with decks like that, has had me revisit some of my feelings around cutesy decks, or decks that felt a little too sweet to me. I think you've pushed me to more deeply consider what's possible working with a deck that might appear to be too soft on the surface. So there is work to be done with that deck that I think that you've pushed me to do. So bravo to you. I think that it became easier after I felt like I had worked with decks that dug into the shadow or shadow imagery a little bit more. It felt like there was room for that in my practice, but you made me take myself less seriously. I felt less important in the face of decks that are also sophisticated, even if they're a little more colorful or have bunnies.
Was it a surprise to see this one?
No, it was not a surprise.
Yeah.
It wasn't a surprise. We know each other too well.
This is so for many years I've taught theater to children of all ages, but like this is the theater teacher in me. Like yes, I can be kind of biting at times, but but I'm playful and I like to smile and have fun and be goofy, and this is that.
I love it. So my next deck is the Kazanlar Tarot, another sharp turn. This deck is trimmed and edged. So if you purchase this deck, it will not look exactly like this. And it was originally published in 1996 by Emil Kazanlar at AGM Mueller, so a mass market publisher originally. I purchased this in 2020 from a collector who had never opened it. So I felt very it felt like a moment when I received this deck from 1996 and got to open it myself. I adore this deck. He calls it an ecumenical tarot. It's a word that I've robbed for myself to use to describe my own spirituality and my tarot practice as well. He brings both Catholic tradition and Arabic Islamic tradition, which both sort of reside in his own cultural background, and adds in some other mythologies and traditions, combining them to tell the different stories in each card. The cards are story driven, and that's not true for every tarot. That's not necessarily true, for example, for Tabula Mundi, but these cards tell stories to make sense of what you find here. There is a mythological story behind the Lover's card here. The swords go to ancient Egyptian mythology, so there are stories behind that. I find the deck really compassionate, and I have written down culturally promiscuous. I'm here for that. I have my own weird background, so it feels validating to see some different religious foundations come together, and the insistence that they are complementary and do something meaningful. So that's why I think it describes me well. How do I work with this deck? I love that it offers alternatives to a Golden Dawn esoteric practice and tradition. So after working with Tabula Mundi, I sort of started digging deeply into traditional Golden Dawn meanings and associations, but this gestures at the Kabbalah with its own approach. There is a non-traditional approach. We see, for example, a whole different set of glyphs associated with this Eight of Cups. Like there's a bunch going on that side of the card that has nothing to do with the Golden Dawn tradition, but is still, I think, rich and offers something interesting and gives me something to learn. I love working with myth in my practice and teaching myth, and this introduces me to some myths to dig into. Look at that Catholic image. I'm loving this. Look at that guy. So this deck, as it happens, this is no longer published mass market. It is back in print. The artist himself, who lives abroad, has republished his own art. It is a little tricky, so you can purchase this deck at kazanlartarot.com. but to purchase it is 159 euros plus shipping, which, you know, is sort of aligns with some out of print costs. So it is definitely what some people call an investment deck, quite literally. But for 159 euros, you can get it brand new. So there you are. Here's my very fancy Kazanlar Tarot. What do you think of that one, Amelia?
I think that is your version of Playful.
It feels like there's subtext there.
That's Danielle's version of something playful and fun. There probably is subtext there, but no, I mean, that's, you know, it's a very you deck. That speaks to you. Okay, number 3. So I'm going to go with the Margarete Petersen Tarot. Are you shocked?
Not at all.
I love this deck. I bought this in 2016. So, you know, this is a little of my tarot history. I had the same deck for the first year or two that I was reading. And then I lost one of those cards. So I bought a different deck to replace it with. And then had that deck for about 2 or 3 more years before I even knew that it was possible to own multiple tarot decks and that there might be value in that. So this was one of those first decks that I purchased when I started to, you know, explore and expand and see what was possible and out there, trying to get that to where it doesn't have a glare. This deck is another one of those that appeals to the creative side of me, but in a much more different way. So part of my personal creative practice is just is playfulness, and then the other part of it is self-exploration and asking questions or answering questions with more questions and kind of that digging deeper. And this is a deck that I go to for that type of work. Not only do I just find the imagery really beautiful and really fluid and kind of, I love how abstract it is, because I love that I can look at it and kind of really spend a lot of time with the image. This is not a deck that I really read big multi-card spreads with. I'll usually do 2 to 3 cards with this deck, not only because they are massive cards, but also because you could really just spend an eternity. And 2 cards is enough for them to have a conversation with each other, and they have plenty to say. She's the talkative one. But it appeals to the part of me that needs that kind of grounding and reminder and being brought back into myself, into my body, into the way my feet feel on the ground. So when I'm feeling really heady and kind of out of myself, this is what I go to find that again. It also has a very mothering energy. And so, you know, if you're looking for something that is going to handle difficult situations in a tender way, I feel like this is that. But she's not, I mean, I know you've seen or at least have this, that devil card is nothing to it is a very, there are confronting images in it. But I don't know, there's something about the way that it holds you and invites you into each card that it doesn't feel like you need to kind of step back from it. Yeah, I don't know. You're not surprised that this comes up.
I am not. I've heard different over the course of sort of deepening my practice, people describe things as shamanic. These words get used and then I feel very out of the know. There's something sophisticated I don't understand. But I saw that deck and it made sense to me as oh, that is a fantastic word to describe something that's deep. It feels mothering, but it feels like a mother with a sting. You know?
Yes. I mean, she's going to be honest. She's not going to lie to you and tell you that everything's going to be okay if it's not. She's going to tell you to get your stuff together. But it's, I don't know, it's guidance. She guides you. And again, I want to live in that world sometimes. It's just so pretty to me. And, you know, it's like I have two modes. Either I want something that I find really visually appealing, or I want something, you know, more pippish where there's less. So there you go.
That deck makes you work for it.
It does.
Really does. And I am lazier than that. You encouraged me to get it and consider working with it. It's a deck that I think I've yet to develop a relationship with, but I am far more drawn to it than I was at first. Again, like sort of challenging me to not take myself too seriously and to consider that like maybe the shortcoming is my own, my resistance to doing the work, instead of being like, that deck is like that deck is inaccessible. Like maybe there's something to work for there.
It's so funny you describe yourself as lazy when you're like, the first two decks you showed are like the Tabula Mundi and the Kazanlar. Like those require so much work, but it's work that you're used to.
It's work that I'm used to and that I enjoy. Isn't like the laziness is forcing ourselves to reach out of this space that feels comfortable and confident, right? Like I know how to do thinking and take myself very seriously and learn facts and associations and glyphs and all of that. That's where I feel at home. But you know, Margarete Petersen, she's not interested in like all of those skills that I have. She's going to make me do the work. So I haven't done that work yet. Maybe one day it will be a good deck to work with or describe myself, but today is not that day.
Yeah.
My next deck is the Tarot de Carlotydes. That's going to be how I pronounce it, and I'm going to die on that hill. I have trimmed this deck. So here is the Hierophant card. So there, Amelia, you said my last deck was playful. This is a playful deck. I adore this deck. It was created in 20 Santos. It was published by Flornoy, still published by Flornoy, I believe. And I saw it online as a deck that was available in Europe. So I ordered it from Amazon France immediately after it was published. It is now available. So I think a year or two later, it became something that Llewellyn made available in the United States. And it's a good thing. It's a phenomenal deck. If you purchase the deck, it will have the English words on the bottom and the Spanish language titles on the top. I love a small deck. I have small hands. And also, I love to trim a deck. It's my deck, and I can do that if I want to. So that's why it's trimmed. There are borders, but there are Spanish language titles you don't see.
So are there like two borders? Did you just trim the outer border? Okay.
No. So all I trimmed off, the sides are the same size. The bottom is the same bottom. It's just what we see here is the King of Cups. That same title in Spanish on the top is what I trimmed right off.
Gotcha. Okay.
I adore this deck. So here's what I think this deck captures about me. I've been described as cheeky, and I kind of love it. Like, I don't know if like I should like that description, but I find this deck to be extremely cheeky and irreverent. That's a word that we have decided to use to describe our business, and I think it captures it. So there is irreverence in this deck, but look at this. The colors are gentle. If you look quickly, you're like, oh, how adorable. There are skulls on those coins. I love it. I think this is a deck with a sting. What else did I put? It is sweetness with a sting. And here's how I use it. So I think it's fun for storytelling. It's weird. And I had never inner child work is the word that I heard or phrase that I heard and didn't quite understand as a theory or like robust practice. But what I do know and what I've come to understand is I have stuff to work with that happened in my childhood, as we all do. And this is a perfect deck for that. We are all coming in with childhood fun and childhood wounds, some more than others, in that balance of things. And I think that this deck captures both sides of that. It captures the wounds and the play and does a really good job. So look at this. I mean, look at this 10 of Cups with the vodka. We've got a lot happening here. I'm here for every second of it. Look at that. Let me see if I have some of my favorites. Look at this Two of Swords. I love it.
Like childhood Danielle have been attracted to this deck?
I think so. And I think it's a deck that I could have sneaked past my mom, right? Like she wouldn't see this and say, like, why is there a hand with a stigmata in the Five of Swords, right? She'd be like, "Ooh, pretty colors. Like this is great for my girly child who wears dresses to church." And I think this deck, the stigmata made sense to me for a reason. Like that pain, associated with like the stories we find at church when I was like, wearing my dress and crossing my legs because that's what I was taught to do. That all comes together. And I think it's all captured really, really well. The Ten of Swords. I mean, I just look at this.
That's a Catholic deck.
It is absolutely. I mean, we have like the Pope with his cup of tea at play in our Hierophant. Here's our Queen of Pentacles. There's just
I love that the Pope is drinking tea with the rabbit. Like that's just
it is absolutely. It is the Pope in the land of Alice in Wonderland. I live. So this is, I think, the deck that best captures like little girl me and my spirit of play. But I will say, there are some decks that we use that you were describing, I think, Playful Heart as a deck that's a good space to go when like you don't need a knife wielded at you and all of this confrontation happening. You need the truth and you need a deck that allows you to get into this stuff, but isn't necessarily like holding a hammer. This guy, this young lady over here, she's got a hammer. She's got like, nails for a heart in the middle of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So this is not a place to go when I like need some lightness. This is a place to go when I need a recognition of the way that like pain and sweetness come right together, and often do it in the stories that we lived or tell about our childhoods. I love the projection, the collective me about my stuff. This is a deck that does that work.
I would say though that very much identifies with your brand of humor. Like you are
saying these things and I'm like, what do we mean?
I'll explore later off camera. All right, we'll launch into number 4 for me, and it took me this long, but we are here for TDM. It is my favorite way to read cards, hands down. This is the Flornoy Tarot de Marseille. I got this at Newt's actually when we went in 2023. We were there together. I got it from the vendor from Tarot Garden. I can't remember his name. I was trying to remember it earlier, but I couldn't. But anyway, I mean, it's your classic TDM, and if I'm not going to go to Sorcery Underground, this is what I'm going to go to next, always. And this is my favorite version of the TDM that I have. I have many historic reproductions as well as historic, what's it called? Where it's like how it looks to us now. And this is my favorite of them. It is clear. The cards are nice and small, so I can lay bigger 9-card spreads out. And it's not going to take up half of the table. It's the best, in my personal opinion. What does this say about me? This is my love for reading pips and my love for reading historic tarot. I started with really esoteric tarot, and I kind of stripped my way back and found my way back into reading pips and TDM specifically. And when I started reading TDM, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. And it affected not only, understanding how to read pip cards, but it affected how I read every other tarot deck I have. When I need to kind of like, as a reader, when I need to pare back and get to my roots, this is where I go. When I feel like my readings are lacking in clarity, I go back to TDM because this is where I find that. That I bring everything to the TDM. I bring mundane life stuff. I bring existential questions about life. I mean, I will read everything with the TDM. To me, this is tarot. This is where it started, and this is where everything bloomed from. And so I don't know.
Can I tell you how I think that describes you? You are a contrarian at heart. I love this about you. And there's something about those pips. So a scenic pip will give us constraints of some kind. There are ways to read an image metaphorically, but a female figure dancing in the middle of a card gives us that, and we've got to do some work with that image. And you approach things that says, you can't make me. You cannot make me associate my issue with a dancing lady. Nuh-uh. So the TDM is capacious. It gives you room to read those pips however they come together for you. I love this about you. You have made me, maybe we're friends because you make me do stuff with tarot. You have made me find more ways to engage with the TDM. I've loved what people call pips with feelings. So I'll get into a good pip for the same reason that I need something that leaves more room than I find in a clear scenic image. But I didn't love the color pattern of historical tarot, and you have brought me to that. I think my intellectual impulse is like, ooh, history. Like, tell me the story of old tarot.
No, you're so right, though. I can't stand a deck telling me that the Five of Swords is always going to be about like a battling of the intellect. It's just not. It's not.
Well, if you're reading about like, how do I manage, working with my son on his art project, like, you're not going to war. You need help. You need a different kind of help. So I understand this.
Yeah, no, it's true. I don't like being told what to do. And I find that the TDM it definitely tells me what to do, but like the style of reading doesn't tell me what to do.
We have to have a small story time. So at the Newts, where you got that deck, do you remember when we went to that table, you had known, like, you had done some shopping in that room and you knew that they had TDM somewhere, but we went to that table and there were no TDMs laid out. So I remember being like, where are these decks that you mentioned to me? Like, did you hallucinate them because you wanted there to be historical tarot? And we had to ask the man from Tarot Garden, who pulled out a box from under the table. It felt like we were doing a drug deal. He pulled out the box from under the table.
Remember the way I started like shaking right away? It was like, oh my God, yes.
I was like, is this hidden? Like, what is the secret that's happening? And we kind of like went to the side of the table and looked in the box. But before we did that, he wanted to make sure we were serious buyers. I cherish that memory, and it makes me sort of love the exclusivity of TDM. Or TDM's not exclusive. Like, this deck has been around for this tradition has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. But our special decks from Tarot Garden, from under the table, like, we were doing something illicit, and I live for it.
Yes. TDM is accessible to all. You just have to know which back alley to go down to find it.
Right. That's absolutely right. All right. So my fourth deck is the Stretch Tarot. This edition of the Stretch Tarot is edged. It's also linen. I love this deck. It was made by Joseph Stretch, self-published in 2016. I purchased it from the creator himself in 2020. And this deck is melancholy. I have described myself as melancholy to students. And like, I had a student say I was delightfully cheerful. Like, I'm not faking my sense of humor, but I get dark. Maybe I'm not doing it in the classroom or on camera, but like when I'm sitting around, thoughts get dark sometimes. So I find that this deck captures, look at this 10 of Swords ruin. We are going dark right there. I'm not necessarily the most enthusiastic user of collage decks. There's plenty I love, but they're not really my preferred form of art. But this collage deck is fantastic. This is the Voodoo Queen herself. Marie Laveau is the Hierophant. I live for that. I find the deck to be oddly inclusive, very interesting and unexpected representations. And then we have something as simple but deep as the moon with that color palette. I think there's a real color language here happening. I have used this deck to read for clients before. It really speaks to them. It's not a deck that I would pick to work with. I've given clients options and they pick this deck, which I think says something about them. If I say that this introduces me, this gives us a sense, right, of what sort of spirit they're bringing to a reading, what they view as the energetic foundation of their question. And, just a touch witchy. Look at that 7 of Pentacles with the broom. So I do love this deck. I've used it for ancestor work as well. I like that. I love this death card. We're not getting too complicated, but this is death. There's no looking at this. I think, and leaning too far into rebirth, right? We do have the blooming flowers, but like that great big skull is not letting us out of death. That is, I think, the impulse that pulled me away from decks that felt overly light, at least when I first started practicing. I found my way back to some of those decks and find them useful, but I needed decks that were like, no, death is death. There's no room to get around the period at the end of the sentence that is death. So now this creator has decided to make his deck available at Make Play. It's available in linen, and it may also be available in Superior Smooth, but I recommend the linen. It's very shuffleable, and I do love a shuffleable deck. So here he is. I have seen controversies around, like, what is it, personifying our decks? I don't know the controversy. Here he is.
I was looking at that and I was like, I feel like that is the masculine side of what like Marie Bento does with Divine Muses and like her work. I have had my eye on that one for a long. It's been out for a while.
It has been since 2016. That's right.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, I've like known it existed and I've had my eye on it for a while, but I don't know. It's just not one that I've ever brought in. I am surprised that you brought that one up, but I can see why, like what part of you that is. I can definitely
say the royal we do not love the background of this, the back of the cards. Look at this.
I like the back. You know what that speaks to me is the like circus performer in me. Like that is.
Have you done circus?
I used to stage manage circus. Yes.
I love. This feels a little too Morgan Greer. I like the Morgan Greer, but the Morgan Greer is saturated and bright. It makes me feel patriotic in a way I don't like. It
feels very circus to me.
So and I edged it, and I like it with the edging. This has improved my relationship.
All right, number 5 for me. We're going to stay on the TDM train, and I'm going to go with the Tarot des Ozarks by Tori Lepage. She is a creator from the Ozarks, hence the name Tarot des Ozarks. And you can get this deck on Make Playing Cards. It's still around. These are the newer backs. The older backs were some weird like Christmas design.
It's Printer Studio. It may also be Make Playing Cards, but I found mine on Printer Studio.
Okay. I think I ordered mine from Make Playing Cards, but okay. I got this in spring of 2023. And I don't know why it took me so long to get it. It was something I'd been eyeing for years. If you know anything about me, it's that I move very, very slow when it comes to introducing things into my life. I have to think about them from every angle. My Decan card, like my Decan court card is the Knight of Pentacles, and I feel like that says everything it needs to say about me. I'll get there eventually, but I will take my own time doing it. This is just another one of those decks. This combines for me what I love about Tarot de Marseille, and then what I love about things like the Margarete Petersen and even like the Playful Heart. It is Pips. She actually does not consider this a Tarot de Marseille, which I find really interesting. She just considers this a Pip deck.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's derivative though. It is definitely derivative. But one of the things that I love about reading with Tarot de Marseille specifically, like within the Pip reading style, is that I do think when you look at like a Pip card, I think there's imagery there. There's something to look at beyond, 8 swords. And this is like that on steroids. There is so much visual interest here. There's so many colors. It's so easy when you see cards lined up next to each other to see patterns and that sort of like visual rhyme, which is how I read with TDM and Pips. I look for patterns. I look for again, like that visual, like poetry within the cards. What does it say that this 8 of Cups has a blank background? Like, why is this so bare compared to, something that's a bit more, expressive? This is like taking that contrarian nature of reading TDM like a step further, and it's like, and I'm gonna read with something that's totally wacky. I also this very much appeals to the artist in me. Her use of colors, her use of texture, her use of like kind of abstract form it allows room for my brain to really get to like sink in and explore in ways that a more literal image wouldn't. But yeah, that's my number 5. Does that surprise you at all?
No. No, it doesn't. For the reason that you said, because it is, I think, leaning into, I read it in the spirit of a Marseille. So, I'm here for the creator's description of the deck. I'm not dying on that hill, but it does speak so strongly of the Tarot de Marseille tradition and pattern that's what I see in it. And so it is like, it's doing what it is that I see as one of your like main and best qualities, which is I love tarot, but I'm going to read it how I want to, and you can't make me. And so that is like, you love Tarot de Marseille for that reason, but this goes even further. Like, you can't make me Tarot de Marseille see a white background where it might be like hot pink or whatever. And I would say that's a really fun deck to read for somebody who may be first attracted to the Tarot de Marseille tradition, but is a little turned off by what feels plain or what feels uninviting or uninspiring about the color palette, which I think can grow on you. But there is kind of more visual interest and excitement, in my humble opinion, in Tarot des Ozarks.
This is a fun one to read for other people with as well. It's, there's nothing off-putting about it. Like, people are really attracted to the colors and the textures and everything that's going on. And it's fun to lay out the cards and let people ask people what they see in it, and kind of use that as a jumping off point. Cause it's just so rich. Pip decks do not have to be boring. They can be very exciting. And this is a great example of that.
Yes. Agreed. I will give us my 5th deck as well. So mine is the Hyde Tarot. This is published by Dan Francis, self-published in 2019. It is the newest deck in my selection of 5. So I purchased it from the creator in 2024. I think it's weird. I think I'm weird. So I think it captures that about me. I find it to be oracular. It is it is deeply invested in plain symbol. It's direct, but I think still kind of a little dark, a little mystifying. There are different ways of reading it. It's a little enigmatic as well. Just fun. It's fun to read. It makes me work, but I have fun while I'm working for a reading. So the part of me that likes kind of kitchen table fortune telling likes this deck. If I'm attracted to something like the Lenormand tradition, but I'm in a tarot kind of mood and can't choose, this is a good deck for that. It's a good clarifier if one ever uses decks to clarify other readings or other cards. And I like journaling with this deck. I go weird places when I journal with this deck, like a mushroom for the 5 of Cups. Like I need to sit with that, like the moist kind of like, in the ground. I do not think that we typically think of a muddy like fungus plant when we think 5 of Cups, but I'll do that. Let's see what we can come up with when we do that. This eye for the 5 of Pentacles. I mean, I find it really affecting. And if you read his website at all, or the guidebook, the PDF guidebook that comes with it, he talks about how he made this deck in a period of grief. And that makes sense to me. I sort of see that mirrored in some of these images. The 2 of Swords is a vampire. So this is that egg for the 10 of Swords being fragile and cracking easily, being a shell that might come in on us at any time. T for the 3 of Pentacles. So this is still in print. You can go to his website at danfrancis.co.uk, get your very own copy if it's a deck that seems attractive to you. The Statue for Death. So weird. I mean, weird isn't like the primary reason that I chose this, but it's weird. And I like the way that it merges with my affinity for sort of kitchen table, Oracle, Lenormand, Sibyl readings.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's like your version of that though, because like I have a version of that is very like cartomantic. It feels old world. You are a modern gal. You love your like newer feeling things, and yeah, it's like the Danielle version of that.
I'll take it.
Well, those are 5 decks.
What are your 5 again? What's a quick summary? What are those titles?
So we have the Sorcery Underground, the Playful Heart Tarot, the Margarete Petersen Tarot, the Flornoy, Jean Noblet. I actually don't think I specifically said that, but that's the Noblet, and the Tarot des Ozarks. And what are yours?
Tabula Mundi, Kazanlar Tarot, Tarot de Carlotydes, Stretch Tarot, and Hide Tarot. Altogether, you know me now, audience.
this is who we are as readers and people. We would love to know you. So if you feel so inclined, you can either respond to this video with your own, or you can put in the comments below what are some decks that describe you as a reader and maybe as a person as well. And we look forward to reading those. And then now we want to close out with a quick 2-card reading where Danielle will pull a card and I will pull a card. And let's say today that we are reading for anybody watching this video, how can they, what should we ask?
How can they end their day feeling empowered?
All right. And what are you reading with, Danielle?
I'm going to use the Stretch Tarot because he is handy and he is linen.
I'm using the Playful Heart. These feel like they are either going to get along well, or it's going to be like oil and water. We'll see. All right.
You're compatible. If these do not get along, this does not reflect the depth of our friendship.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
I like these though as the 2 sides of Sibyl. Sibyl is the headmistress of our school, and these recommend, combined, I think, give a good sense of the bizarre, intelligent, interesting lady that she is.
Yeah.
So I will pull first. I have the Eight of Swords, a card that I love that represents oddity, what I think is a really interesting approach to collage. And this card is entitled Interference, which happens to be the title that you'll find in the Thoth tradition. What is your card?
I pulled the Fool. So kind of like the exact opposite of the Eight of Swords. So we have this, hold it. Can you hold up your Eight of Swords for a second? We'll hold them up side by side. So this is kind of, you know, we start with constriction and that like that feeling of being trapped, and we go into just complete and utter freedom and abandonment and just exuberance and joy and zest and, you know, everything that is the Fool. So Danielle, in your mind, how does that inform anybody viewing this video, how they can empower themselves today?
What do I think about that Eight of Swords? I mean, I think if you're a list maker too, I am a list maker. I have my days planned out. I'm not always successful at executing, but sometimes it feels like a corset. It feels like there is a little too much order. I don't feel like there's a lot of room. So this is, I think, speaking to those people in particular who feel a little confined by the shape of their day. If your day has been really ordered and structured and maybe had some expectations around it, you feel like your own desires have been interfered with. I see this combination of the Eight of Swords and the Fool as an invitation to like go bananas and do something silly and get off list, like get off schedule.
Yes, go do something just for the fun of it. And we even have our Fool here is not alone. So call up some friends, go crazy, go out for a night, you know, play a game with some people.
Make some noise. The bird's coming out of the cage.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to know where to find us, you can find links to our website and social media handles below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time in the lab.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.